My name is Silas Whitaker, and for over 20 years I dedicated my life to fighting fires. I wasn't just a firefighter, I was a man who believed I had been called to this profession, to step into the flames when others were running out. It wasn't just about saving homes or stopping destruction. For me, it was a mission, a way to serve both my community and God. I was born and raised in a small town in Northern California, where wildfires were just a part of life. Every summer, the hills burned, the sky turned red, and families packed up, hoping the flames wouldn't take everything they had. My father, Samuel Whitaker, was a firefighter. I grew up watching him put on his gear, disappear into the smoke, and return covered in ash but alive. From the time I was a kid, I knew I would follow in his footsteps. At 20 years old, I joined California's Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, the same department my father had served in for over 3 decades. I was young, eager, and ready to take on whatever came my way. For years, I saw things most people could never imagine. Firestorms swallowing entire neighborhoods in minutes, walls of flames stretching 100 feet high, embers turning night into day. I learned to move quickly, think fast, and trust my instincts. But above all, I learned that no matter how bad things got, God was always with me. I had seen miracles. People rescued from homes just seconds before a roof collapsed. Winds shifting in the middle of a fire to push the flames away from families. Men walking out of infernos completely untouched. I knew there was something greater at work. But in the last few years, something had changed. Wildfires had always been dangerous, but lately they felt different. The seasons were becoming longer, hotter, more relentless. What used to be a few months of battling fires turned into a year-round fight. These weren't just wildfires, they were monsters growing bigger, moving faster, and destroying everything in their path. I had been in this profession long enough to know when something was off. These fires weren't behaving like the ones I grew up fighting. They were more aggressive, unpredictable, almost intelligent. We'd establish fire lines, do everything by the book, but somehow the flames would jump ahead, as if they knew what we were trying to do. I wasn't the only one noticing it. Other veteran firefighters would shake their heads and say, "I've never seen anything like this before." There was something unnatural about them. And deep inside, I felt a growing sense of unease. Had we pushed too far as a society? Had we ignored God's warnings for too long? Was this just nature taking its course, or was there something far more spiritual happening? I didn't have an answer, but I was about to find out. It was January 17, 2023, a day that started just like any other. We had been battling a massive wildfire in Southern California for nearly a week. It had already taken out 300 homes and was moving toward a town of nearly 20,000 people. If we didn't stop it, it would wipe them off the map. I had barely slept. None of us had. By 3 a.m., I was back on the front lines with my team. The fire had spread faster than expected, and we were desperately trying to hold the line before dawn. Then it happened. The wind shifted violently, sending a wall of flames rushing straight toward us. I heard the radio crackle, "Evacuate now! Evacuate now!" I turned to run, but it was too late. A firestorm exploded around me and everything went black. I don't know how long I was gone. One moment I was surrounded by flames, smoke, and unbearable heat. The next I was in a place so beautiful, so peaceful, that I could hardly comprehend it. I stood in what felt like pure light, but it wasn't harsh or blinding. It was alive, wrapping around me like a presence I had always known but never fully understood. The pain was gone. The exhaustion, the fear, the weight of years of firefighting and loss, all of it was gone. For the first time in my life, I felt completely whole. Then I felt someone behind me. I turned and there he was. The moment I saw him, I fell to my knees. Jesus stood before me, more real and powerful than anything I had ever experienced. His presence radiated love, authority, and a holiness that shook me to my core. I had spent my entire life believing in God, trusting in His protection, and witnessing miracles in the middle of chaos. But this was different. This wasn't faith anymore. This was reality. His eyes held compassion, strength, sorrow, and a depth of understanding that pierced through my soul. I expected judgment. I expected him to look at me and say, "Silas, you could have done more. You weren't perfect." But he didn't. Instead, he spoke my name with such love and kindness that I broke down completely. "Silas," he said, "you have fought bravely. But now I must show you the truth." Before I could even respond, everything shifted. In an instant, I was no longer standing in the light. Jesus had taken me to a higher place where I could see the earth below. And what he showed me shook me to my core. I saw the fires I had spent years fighting, but they weren't just natural disasters. I saw dark forces moving through them, feeding off the destruction, using them to spread fear, loss, and hopelessness. These fires weren't just physical, they were spiritual weapons. Jesus turned to me, his expression somber. "The world is changing, Silas. But many are not ready." I watched as cities burned, as people lost everything, but the worst part? Many weren't just losing their homes. They were losing their faith. The fires weren't just consuming forests and buildings, they were consuming hope, trust, and belief in God. Jesus continued, his voice both loving and urgent. "The enemy is using fear to blind them, to turn them away from me, to make them believe they are abandoned." My heart ached as I saw it happening before my eyes. "Tell them, Silas," Jesus said. "Tell them to wake up. Time is short." Before I could respond, everything faded. And then I felt myself falling away from the light. I woke up with a gasp, my chest heaving for air, my body screaming in pain. I was no longer in the presence of Jesus. I was back in the world, back in my broken body, back in the aftermath of the fire. Blinding white lights filled my vision, and it took me a moment to realize that I was lying in a hospital bed. The steady beeping of heart monitors echoed through the room. Every part of me ached, and I felt as if I had been buried under 1,000 pounds of rubble. Then I heard voices, shocked, amazed, and full of disbelief. "He's awake," one of the nurses whispered. Another voice, a doctor's, steady but stunned, said, "He should be dead. There's no way he survived that." That was when I started to remember. The fire. The explosion. The flames swallowing me whole. I had felt my life slip away, and yet, here I was, alive. Tears filled my eyes as the reality of what had happened came rushing back. I had died. I had stood in the presence of Jesus Christ, and he had sent me back with a message. In the days that followed, I had to recover, not just physically but spiritually. Doctors called it a medical miracle. The burns on my body were not nearly as severe as they should have been. I had inhaled a massive amount of smoke, yet my lungs showed no lasting damage. They ran test after test, trying to explain how I had survived when no one else in my position would have. But I knew the truth. I had been given a second chance. And not just for myself, but for the world. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't pretend nothing had happened. The vision Jesus had shown me, the fires, the spiritual battle, the urgency, it wouldn't leave me alone. I had to tell people. I had to warn them. But how? The hardest decision I ever made was leaving the job that had defined me for over 2 decades. Firefighting had been my purpose, my identity, my calling. But now I had a new mission, a mission directly from Jesus himself. I could no longer dedicate my life to just fighting physical fires. I had to wake people up to the spiritual fire raging around them. When I told my fellow firefighters that I was leaving, I was met with confusion, disbelief, and even anger. One of my closest friends on the team, Mark, looked at me with frustration. "Silas, you survived for a reason. You're one of the best we have. Why would you just walk away?" I took a deep breath, looked him in the eyes, and said, "Because God sent me back for something bigger." He didn't understand. Most people didn't. They thought I had suffered trauma, that the fire had messed with my mind. Some even thought I was just too scared to go back. But it wasn't fear that made me leave. It was obedience. After I recovered, I couldn't stop thinking about the warning Jesus had given me. He had shown me that the fires on earth were not just natural disasters. They were spiritual weapons being used against humanity. Fear was being used as a tool of deception. People weren't just losing their homes, they were losing their faith. Jesus had told me, "The enemy is using fear to blind them, to turn them away from me, to make them believe they are abandoned." And he had given me one mission: tell them to wake up. Time is short. One night, weeks after leaving the fire service, I had a dream, or maybe it wasn't a dream at all. I was taken back to the vision Jesus had shown me. I saw more fires spreading, but this time they weren't just wildfires. They were riots, wars, destruction, chaos in the streets. I saw people crying out for help, but instead of turning to God, they turned to governments, technology, and false saviors. I saw churches abandoning the gospel, watering down the truth to please the world. And worst of all, I saw millions of people who thought they were saved, standing in darkness, separated from God, crying out too late. Jesus' voice echoed in my soul. "They are not ready." I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. I had no doubt in my mind, this was coming. And soon. I don't share this story to scare people. I share it because Jesus told me to. We are running out of time. People are asleep, distracted by entertainment, news, politics, money, and meaningless arguments. They don't see the spiritual war raging around them. But I am here to tell you, it is real. The fires will come. The deception will grow. The world will shake. And if you are not rooted in Christ, you will be swept away. I saw it, and I was sent back to warn you. I don't know where you stand with God. Maybe you've been drifting, caught up in the worries of life. Maybe you've never known Jesus personally. You've heard about him, gone to church, but never truly given your life to him. Or maybe you've been playing religious games, thinking that as long as you go through the motions, you'll be fine. Let me tell you something. Being religious will not save you. Being a good person will not save you. Only Jesus can save you. And if you wait until the fires come, it may be too late. I am here to tell you that Jesus is calling you. Right now. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Right now. You don't have time to sit on the fence. Jesus is coming back soon. And when he does, will he know you? I urge you, seek him today. Pray. Open your Bible. Cry out to him. Surrender your life to him. Do not wait until the flames of judgment are upon you, because by then it will be too late. If this testimony has spoken to you, share it. Like, subscribe, and comment below, not just for engagement but because we need to wake people up. Together we can spread the truth of Jesus Christ before it's too late. I've done my part. Now it's time for you to decide. Jesus is calling. Will you answer?